See if this mic's working. All right, thank you, Marcy. That was pretty awesome. Hopefully I'll live up to that. So yeah, welcome. It's been an awesome day so far, hasn't it? DroidCon Boston is one of my favorite conferences out there. And of course, today you're going to learn how to do a handstand. Everybody excited? Woo! All right, so I probably got this talk of how to learn to do a handstand because I'm a GDE. I don't think there's anywhere else that if I was an Android developer and I submitted this, they'd accept that. So I'm very thankful, but I promise I'll make it all come together. Oh yeah, I'm Sam Edwards. I work at Capital One, and at the bottom down here, I'm Handstand Sam on Twitter, so feel free to tweet any pictures, and DroidCon Boss, our normal hashtag. So this is where this talk came from. I tweeted out this thing saying it was the last day to submit for DroidCon Boston. I spoke here last year, I had an amazing time, I definitely wanted to come back, so I was just going to play the odds. I was going to put in a lot of talks. So I said I wanted to submit. Joe Birch, who actually is talking here today, said he'd said 5 or 6. And I was like, wow, that's really good. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go for 10, and how about how to do a handstand? Would that be good for an Android conference, right? And little did I know, he goes, I think they'll blow any of my talks away out of the water. Go for it, bonus points if you do it in an Android costume. Sorry. So I submitted 3 tech talks, and at the very end, I threw in how to do a handstand. And this is like last minute at night, right before it closed. And I was on vacation at the time, so, you know, fun vacation. And then Garmo said perfect, and some other good feedback, so found out I got it. So had to make this thing happen. And it's not, I am going to teach you how to do a handstand, but this talk is really how to learn new things and how to go about that and the parallels between learning something in a physical manner and learning something in Android software development. So, she called me Handstand Sam. I'm all famous. That's not really true, but hopefully now, maybe you know that I've done handstands. I go to Handstand Sam on Twitter. Handstand Sam is my blog where I do development articles for Android. And so far, I've done 567 handstands across the world. So it's actually 565 in the next slide because I did 2 others that I added this morning. So that many so far. And this year is in Zion National Park in Utah. So I took a video of this website that I put together to show off all the handstands that I've done. I'm just going to let it scroll a little bit, but it's on handstandsam.onamap.net. And don't look too closely, but it's just to show you how many there are, right? There's places like in England, at Disneyland, in New Mexico, New Hampshire, Virginia, Washington, D.C., North Carolina, Texas, Oklahoma, Grand Canyon, Golden Gate Bridge, Beartooth Pass in Yosemite, County Store, Virginia Beach, and so forth. So it gives you an idea that there's like a lot of handstands. And so I had to put this site together. I don't know if you saw this thing way back a long time ago, but there was a guy named Matt that like danced all over the world. And people were like, oh, you're like copying him, right? And actually I have some that predate him, so the answer is no, but he did give some extra inspiration to keep doing this. So yeah, this website does exist. This is where I wrote this in like some jQuery and some Angular stuff. Yes, JavaScript. But it allowed me to make it in a website where I could view all these things in a cool way. So far, 10 different countries. Obviously, I have a lot of places to go, but pretty good coverage so far. And 46 US states. And as you can see, a lot of places in the US. Been really lucky. I've taken off like mini sabbaticals of work. I took 3 months at one point back in 2008 to do all of Canada and the US. My wife and I have traveled around and lived in 6 different states. And this has just been kind of my thing. Like when I go somewhere, I'll take a picture. You probably had this in the background of your computer. My thing did not crash. This is OSX Yosemite. And so actually it's from the floor of the Yosemite Valley looking up at Half Dome, which is like this picturesque rock formation. And it's about a mile above the valley floor. And this is actually me doing a handstand on top of that. So this is my favorite handstand because it looks really cool. And I probably shouldn't have done it. And my wife, when she found out how high it was, she's like, why did you do that? That's not a good idea. So anyway, now that I have a child, never going to happen again. But it was cool. As you can tell, I'm not like on the very edge, but it's still, you know, a mile down. So, all right. So let's learn how to do a handstand. That's enough about me. How many people here know how to do a handstand? Can I get some hands? Ooh, this is pretty good. Got like 7, maybe 8. It's pretty good. Somebody last night said there's going to be 2 people. Like, no, there's more. All right, we got 8 people. So this is good. We're all going to learn something. We're all like new to this, which is a good thing. First thing when you're learning anything is you want to establish a safe environment. When you saw that picture of me at Yosemite, I made sure that in any direction, if I fell, I could just totally take all my body weight flat and just get a bruise or something, but I wouldn't fall off the cliff. At least that's what I told myself. But you try to do something in a safe environment so that you minimize a bad effect that's going to happen. So really, this is a real-life try-catch block, right? When you're first starting something, you just are going to try it. It's a handstand. And you're going to catch just a handstand exception. You don't really know all the subtypes of this yet. There's no documentation on it. Maybe somebody wrote something, but the key thing is you can do it, right? Just you'll get that exception and you'll figure it out. So what are some types of exceptions we might run into when doing handstands? There's form exceptions. So you go up, you do a handstand, you have some balance problems, you go off to the left or the right. But what you do is, as you're going, you learn how to deal with that. Like, that's a handled exception now. I know how to recover from that. I know what to do. Same with the velocity exception. When you're going up to do one, you could go really fast and kind of topple over the top. So that's another thing that you can learn how to handle and then do better next time. Mental exceptions. So there's the unconfident exception, right? This goes with anything that you're going to learn in life, whether it's doing a handstand or starting Kotlin or RxJava. It's like, oh, I don't really think I can do that, Like, I'm not smart enough, or I'm not strong enough, or I'm not whatever. But really, it's about surrounding yourself with positive people so you can gain that confidence. Because anybody can do anything, you just have to start small. Embarrassed exception. I am totally prepared for that today. My catch block is so big because, of course, I have to do a handstand today. But yeah, getting ready for the embarrassed exception, I got this. And environmental exceptions. So uneven surface exception, if I try to do a handstand on something slanted, that's going to be very different. I need to know how to handle that. Kick in the face exception. This may not seem that crazy, but like I've done them in Times Square or somewhere else where there's a lot of people going on. So like my wife's over there with the camera, or maybe I've set a timer, right? And I'm kind of waiting. I'm like, all right, people are going by, people are going by. But there's been many times when you go up and it's like you almost kick somebody in the face. So that's something you want to handle and make sure you mitigate. And finally, the fell off a cliff exception. This is extremely fatal. Your phone will never reboot. I'm sorry. So the first time that you try anything, you're going to try it, and you're going to fail. But that's OK, right? Everybody has to try something the first time. The important part is to fail gracefully. We know when we try something, we have to have that catch block to know we're in a safe place, and we can figure out how to recover from that. So we get our try block. We're going to do our handstand. And then as we start going and we encounter each one of these scenarios, so an uneven surface exception, or the fell off a cliff exception, we keep learning as we go along how we're going to handle these things. And this is a process of learning, right? We're saying we want to do this thing, and we run into all these problems. We go down rabbit holes. But then we figure out my execution block is going to be that much more stable in the future because I know how to handle these exceptions. So finally, if you hit a random exception that you don't handle, you just log it and exit gracefully. If you see my joke here, there you go. Water break. So let's keep going. All right, so this is a few weeks ago. My family went on a little vacation, and this is at Santa Monica Pier in Los Angeles. So this is my little son. He's the best kid in the world, and me. So it's on this balance beam. I don't want to have a kick in the face exception. I'm like, please go over there, And then I'm going up, and I'm not that good at handstands. Plus, I've never done these things. That's really ridiculous. And oh gosh, I fell over, right? But like, look, I handled it. Everything's cool. No big deal. And you know what? I got a picture out of it. Oh, he's really good. Yeah, that's good, guys. Oh, that's not too bad. All right. Yeah. So hey, guys, I'm really good at handstands. I'm handstand Sam. That's it. Thank you. So that's the thing too. Like, you can give the impression like you're really good at something, but behind that, you might be that guy falling over a lot of the time. And most of the case, that's always how it is. You have to learn how to deal with things, and you have to get it so you do things exactly right. This is a screen. This is a picture from this morning, from this angle. But Lisa Ray said something awesome. She said, when you're learning something new, you want to try it in a sandbox because it's so much more fun. And that's a slide I already had here, and I thought it went along really well. It basically says that when you're learning something new, you want to do it in somewhere safe. So in Android development, that's a sample project or maybe a library project, but it's something away from your production code that you're not going to intermingle everything and cause a problem. When I started learning to do a handstand, I actually did it on a beach when I was a kid. And what's nice there is you're kind of on an angle, so when you're going up, you're really not going to topple over too much. You're just learning piece by piece, And it was a safe place. You could fall in the sand, and you're not going to break your neck like you would on concrete or something. Well, you still could, but try not to. OK, here we go. So let's do a handstand. I said I'd do one, and then we'll get to the actually more analogies of learning things. But let's do it. So the way that we're going to do it is we're going to start small and gain confidence. So you're going to learn how to do this. First thing you're going to do is get ready. So you're going to stretch your wrists, just like you would if you're going to code, right? Get ready. Your arms and your legs. I've already pre-stretched. You don't have to watch all of it. But we want to get ready, right? We want to be loose. We want to be good there. Next thing we want to do is just a push-up. So if you think about a handstand, it really is just like a push-up, right? You're just down there, and that's all handstand is. It's just something a little bit different. And unfortunately, with the lighting, it has to show that I have a bald head. By the way, I got called out when practicing this. There are photos in here of a guy that's not bald. That's still me. I've been doing this since 2001, OK? So anyway, this is what we got over here. So you have the push-up, right? And then the next thing you want to do after you have the push-up is you want to do a mini handstand, right? So you're on your hands, and then kick up. That was a handstand, right? The hands on the floor, nothing else. And another thing, I was talking with somebody last night, I think it was Hari, who's another speaker here, and he's like, oh, well, I learned in martial arts to do a handstand against the wall. It's like, oh, that's a good idea. I didn't know about that. Because I'm like a self-taught handstander or whatever you call it. I just kind of figured it out. So the way that he said he'd do that is kind of like we were doing there with the kick-ups. I'm not going to show you this. But if you're against the wall, you would be in your hands and you work your legs up, so you end up in a point where you're finally doing a handstand. And that way, you're not worried about the balancing of your feet. And finally, there's the freestanding handstand, which is basically like the, oh, I know RxJava, right? So it's like, cool, I'm going to do freestanding handstand. Everything's cool. I'm good to go. So what is a freestanding handstand? This is it. On that same trip to California and San Clemente, you go up. It's a little bit more walking because that's cool. And there we go. So what are the steps of doing a freestanding handstand? I actually looked on Google how to do a handstand. I didn't know how to explain this to anybody. So I went on there, and there's a 60-year-old gymnastic thing, right? 6-year-olds doing gymnastics, 3 girls, and they're doing this. And I'm like, wow, they're really good. So what they're doing is they start with the lunge. And so for me, I don't start with the lunge. I just kind of look at it and go. But for them, they got their full lunge, hands up in the air, right? So they can get ready to go. But for me, there's too much going on there. But theoretically, it's the lunge. It's the getting ready to go down. Second of all, it's the kick up. Just going ahead and throwing your feet up in the air. And the reason why you need to do that is because if you put both your feet at the same time, you're just going to kind of have so much momentum, you're going to topple over or you're going to come back. If you do the kick up, you have one and another, and you can kind of meet, right? So it's a way to kind of balance out as you get up. And that's a great way to get your feet up. At least for these standing handstands I know how to do. Finally, you balance. And lastly, you land. There you go. Easy, right? RxJava. So we're going to visualize success. Yes, we did it. Thank you. You're very kind. All right. So lighting, guys, this is what I was talking about. So if everybody here has a phone, you're all Android developers, pull them out. You saw my website. I have 567. I'd like to have 568 photos. And it'd be really cool to have so many different angles of me doing a handstand in DrawingCon Boston. So please pull your phones out, grab a picture of this, and send it to the hashtag or to my Twitter handle. And I got a Lucid jacket, but it was a Keynote, so I had to do it. All right. So as we said, we could do the lunge thing, but I'm not going to do that. So anyway, you just visualize, you go down, kick up, and that's it. Oh, that was my phone. I forgot about that. So don't hit yourself in the head with phone. Thank you. So that was a get hit in the head by your own phone exception. I think it'll be all right. So we crushed it, hopefully. I had to pre-make these slides. I didn't know what would happen. Live demos are always exciting, if they work or if they don't. But I was prepared to handle the embarrassment exception. So obviously, I have a lot of experience. Does that equate to expertise? I don't think so. Obviously, I'm not able to really tell you how to do this. I had to look it up on Google. I just kind of know how to do it. So you first came in here, you're like, oh, this guy's a handstand expert. He has all these photos. This is great. But you know what? kind of in the middle. I know how to do one. I'm not an expert, but I'm not a beginner. And then the thing is, though, do I have knowledge that can be beneficial to others? And the answer is absolutely. So if orange is me and blue is a beginner, I still have something that I know that they don't know. And so this applies to Android development or to anything. There's always somebody that's learning and that doesn't know how to do anything yet. So sharing your knowledge with them will help them grow. So if I go ahead and learn a little bit more, then during that learning experience, I can go ahead and actually share out the knowledge that I learned during that. And when you're learning something and you're explaining back how you learned it, you're so much better at explaining it than somebody that's been doing it forever, because you can actually relate to that person that's going through those struggles. So now I'm sharing what I'm doing, and I'm encouraging this person that doesn't know anything to come up and to do something new. So what's nice is they can keep learning from people that are more experienced. And eventually, they might even surpass me. And now they're even more of an expert, right? And that's totally fine. For me, doing a handstand is about as much as what I did. I don't really care to do anymore. So that would be awesome, though, if somebody got encouraged to go ahead and become a handstand expert. And then maybe I can catch up and learn what you knew. That actually reminds me, so I was on the conference call the other week doing some pair programming with one of the other developers on my team, and my wife was at home that day, and she goes, "Hey, it sounded like somebody's teaching you something. That's weird." And I was like, "Yeah, he's a junior developer. He's been out of school for 2 years, but he knows Kotlin and RxJava. I don't think he's ever heard of Java." So he's teaching me, oh yeah, MVI, of course. Oh, Jake Wharton, like just all these things that I was like, wow. So, the thing is, you can always, even if somebody's new, they know something that you don't know. I wanted to pull some slides from Anise Davis's talk, who was a keynote speaker last year, and this is from RxJava in baby steps, I believe. And so this is a good visualization of that, my Pong version of an expert to a beginner, where for her, it's more of a exponential curve. So you have yourself, you're learning as you go along, but really when you see somebody that's a superstar that knows that RxJava or something else, that's so far out there, right? It seems so far away. But the important part is to take these as baby steps. And like I said, there's always somebody behind you that can learn from your current experiences. Referencing another keynote speaker from last year, Chuki Chan talked about how to be an Android expert. And she had this cycle of the more that you share, the more that you have expertise. And so this is definitely true, where the more you're sharing something, the more you're breaking down what you know so that you're more of an expert at it, because you learn new things when you try to explain it to somebody else. All right, so giving without expectation. There is an entrepreneur and author of this book, Crushing It by Gary Vee. And he had this saying that he said where giving should be 51% of the time, so you should be altruistic and helpful to other people. And you should be still selfish, but 49% of the time. And this is kind of what goes around comes around. But as long as your intentions are good, then you're still able to have self-motivation. So your selfish motivation may be like, well, I want to be an Android Weekly. That would be cool. But if you're able to give and write a really cool article that people can learn from, at the end of the day, there's more people learning than you getting published in Android Weekly. Another slide from Lisa's talk this morning. She talks about self-interest versus community interest, right? She has self-interest, which is a little bit smaller than everyone else. So think about everybody else, but then also think about yourself. So when you're teaching, it's important, like I said, it's important to know that people are just starting. So please be humble, right? You might be developing Android for, I think I've been doing it 7 years now, but there's no reason that somebody that just came out of school that doesn't know, that just learned what an async task was, why I have to be mean to them, right? So be humble, understand that people are going to be learning, be patient with them. Now, you don't have to be the person that sits with the brand newest developer, but as I said, there's always somebody just ahead of you that you can learn from. And that's the person that you can really mentor and grow. And then everyone is a student. We may think that some people are here at the conference and know everything about Android, and that might be true, but they don't know how to speak Mandarin. They don't know how to play guitar. They don't know how to ride a bike or something like that, right? No one knows everything. The world moves fast. Last year, Kotlin got accepted as an official programming language for Android, and now everybody here is like, oh yeah, Kotlin's the best. Always use Kotlin. Cool. And you're trying to keep up, right? Because you feel like you have to. But learning takes time, and it's been a year that goes by. You still have deadlines. You still have to ship things. This is really hard. I have to learn a brand new language. Granted, it's cool, but at work, they're not giving me the time to do this, right? So remember that your time is finite on this earth, right? So this is my little kid. I love hanging out with him whenever I come home from work, and I just there's a work-life balance that's very important. You need to realize that your life is only so long, and that's another reason why everybody's always a student. Everybody's learning. It's because you only have a finite amount of time. So remember that when you're learning things. There's no reason why you have to learn Kotlin, but obviously it's cool. So if you have time, check it out. Everybody's here to learn new things, right? Woo! DroidCon Boston logo going on. We're here to learn about building Android libraries and Gradle modules, signing applications, background processing, Kotlin, API design, Firestore, TensorFlow. I pulled this from the agenda. All right, so a lot of stuff. Keeps going. 30 topics, and then how to do a handstand. 31. So 31 topics that you can learn, right? Oh my gosh, I don't know anything. Come on, guys, I don't know anything. So how do I even go about this, right? What I do is I say, be curious. Find the things that you feel like you're interested in, or the things that you maybe at your work you're like, that might be helpful for me, or I want to check that out, or I've heard something about that. I randomly picked these things. These talks are no better than any others. But I picked Kotlin and constraint layout and reactive architecture. And I said, you know what, these are things that I want to go to these sessions when I'm here. I'm picking out ones that are going to be helpful for me to be curious about. It's going to be an hour of dedicated time where I learn just enough about that where I feel like I can decide if I want to go further or not. But after you're curious, you want to go deep. Pick one thing after you get home that you really want to learn and focus on that. There's no problem with being curious, but if you're actually going to learn anything, you have to go really deep. So pick Kotlin, because everybody wants to learn Kotlin, right? Including me. Extension functions, oh, that's cool. I already knew that. All right. But remember, it doesn't have to be code. Out of all those things there, you may say, oh, all these things are really interesting. I get paid to do that at work, but but I want to go learn how to do a handstand. I want to learn how to speak Mandarin. I want to do whatever else. You don't have to do that. You can learn how to do a handstand. But I didn't say the warning early. Don't try this at home. Don't sue me, all those things. All right. So this is a picture of me doing a handstand in Mokolini Crater out in Maui. So we went on like a cool snorkeling trip. But I don't know, this is what, like 15 feet underwater. So yeah, you could do handstands underwater. So how deep should you go when you're learning something, right? I'm saying going deep on something. But does that mean I just understand it enough to like understand the terminology? Do I understand it enough to build an architecture in my app? Have I looked through the AOSP source code? Do I know exactly how everything works? And that's the thing. It's like there's certain levels of deepness, but you keep going further and further. And it really depends on what you need of where you stop, right? You might not need to look at the source code for RxJava or for Kotlin or for anything else ever, because it doesn't matter to you. But if you need to solve a specific problem, maybe you have to go really deep. So that's just a call out that like going deep means there's so many layers. Did you know not everyone codes 24/7? I know you may not believe that based on my Twitter profile, but I try to put pictures of my kids sometimes. Now, but it's okay. Like do different things. Have a good work-life balance. And anything you learn is going to be good for your brain. Brain fitness, they always talk about with people that are getting more elderly, that have like dementia and so forth. You want to keep your brain strong, whether it's doing like crossword puzzles or whether it's learning a new language or anything like that. You want to keep your brain strong because that's your most powerful muscle. If you don't use it, you're going to lose it. Yeah. So keep learning. Just keep at it. It doesn't matter what you're learning, but stay active, stay going, because that's how you're going to stay strong in that big old brain muscle. All right. What should your motivations be for learning new things, right? We said that time is finite. Like, how are you going to pick which ones? Like I said, go ahead and be curious, pick some of them. But what are some motivations that you could have to actually pick some things out? One could be your job. You could say, well, I want to be promoted to a senior engineer, and in order to do that, I need to learn about how to architect an app, or I need to learn about this special language or something. It could be for fun, like for a handstand. Maybe I want to learn how to ride a cool unicycle or something, or something fun. For coolness, you could learn how to pick out sunglasses. I don't know. Like you could do anything that's kind of cool. You could do a handstand. And then for credibility, you can learn things that just say like, oh, well, I know all these things, so I'm credible now. So there ends up being this learning cycle where the more you try things, the more you're going to learn. And whenever you try, it takes time. So remember, there's this investment of time in order to learn anything. And you really, in my perspective, only learn by really doing. You can read a textbook every day, but until you actually go and take that knowledge and try to apply it, it's just like coming up here and doing that handstand, right? It's like, oh yeah, do the kick up, feet up, land. Got it? No, you need to learn by doing, because you need to learn how to handle those exceptions. You need to learn why you're doing one thing versus another. This is a picture from Death Valley. I think I was by myself. I think I have a little clicker in my hand that has a timer. But I'm basically falling over, but I was like, hey, that's the best picture I got, whatever. It's fine. But like, you always make mistakes, and you learn by doing them. So you're doing it, but you're learning. How do you learn best? The way you learn might not be the same way I learn. But I've kind of put together a few types of learning that I feel like are useful and that people go by. So we have structured classes, reverse engineering, pair programming, and mentorship. Talk through each one of those. So structured classes, we've all gone to school maybe, or maybe we've gone to one of these talks, but we get told information in a way that we establish fundamentals and then we build upon that. And when we actually master all those things, we can keep building our knowledge. So we can keep building on our knowledge and then gain a mastering of like why this means this means this. So structured classes are very good for anybody coming into something brand new. Then we have reverse engineering. You're like, wait, well, how is that a method of learning? I think this is the coolest method of learning, and I think as an engineer, as being somebody that's curious, it's probably the best one. Because what you do is you observe something. So you could observe this handstand, which is at the Acropolis in Athens. And the story behind this actually is, I went ahead and did the handstand, and my wife had like a video camera, and then the security guard came over, boop, boop, blowing their whistle. And they're like, no, 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 no. I have no, sorry, that's bad. Anyway, they were saying a lot of things I didn't understand, because it was Greek to me. Yeah, all right. So I didn't understand, but they came over to our phone. They're like, you must delete this, basically. But it was a video, and they didn't understand, so I got to keep it. So I have a handstand. But I don't know why you're not allowed to do a handstand at the Acropolis, but don't do it. But when you're reverse engineering, sorry, sidetrack, observe what's happening, just in a way that you don't have any biases. You're just looking at how it works. Then you start breaking it into pieces. Right? You say, OK, well, I saw this big thing, but I'm going to say, here's part A, part B, part C. And now you can dive into A, B, and C and see how those work. And then once those are all there, you can understand the whole. So let's look at an example. So here's another handstand in the same area, but on a different set. On this one, it's not as bad. Go up and down, no bailing. So let's go ahead and reverse engineer this, right? First, we have our visualization. Then we have our kick up, our balance, and our landing. So as I said, you break it into steps. You learn how each one works, and then you put it all together. And that's what reverse engineering is when learning. And I think that's a really great way to learn. And as engineers, I don't know, I think it works well. Pair programming. Like I said, there's a lot of cool things we can learn. Don't try to do it after you go to a brewery, but maybe it's a good idea at the time. This is here in Boston, Harpoon, very good. But learn from a peer. This is one of the people that was on my team when it first started. He's now in the Alexa project, but I learned a lot from him. We pair program sometimes, and there's things that you learn even with somebody that's the same level as you, right? Pair programming is, hey, I'm a junior engineer working with a junior engineer, and we're working to solve a problem together, but we realize that our backgrounds and the things that we've learned and connected aren't necessarily the same thing. So the way I do something may be a little bit more optimized than the way they do something, and so we can learn off each other. So pair programming allows us both to understand that feature, what we're working on, and better understand how to do something. Then finally, mentorship. So this is when you're guided by an expert. And this isn't the same huddled over somebody's shoulder the whole time, but it's somebody that you can reach out to and say, hey, like my little kid here, I want to do a handstand. So he can actually do this. He's like, Dad, hey. But yeah, he's getting there. He has something to look up to. If he had any questions about it, I could tell him. But I think he'd probably want to go through a class and learn all the basics and the fundamentals. But I'm on the other side of the spectrum, right? I'm an adult. But mentorship. So this is super important in my technology career. I went through college. I didn't do that great in college, but I did good in CS classes. And I got a job afterwards. And I did good for 2 years, but I was still whatever, programming. And I was probably 25 then. And there was a 60-year-old engineer that came in. And we got assigned a project together, and he spent so much time and energy mentoring me. And I blossomed as a developer, right? He gave me problems that were hard to solve, but was there to catch me when I fell, right? I was doing networking in C++. I had no idea how to do that. And then I started doing visual drag and drop web apps. I didn't know how to do that. But he gave me the room to learn, and he was there to support, and he'd do long phone calls if needed. And having that mentorship and somebody there is so important. I think all of you can find that teacher, that mentor, or somebody that really helped you grow. And Paul was definitely that person for me. For best results, I feel like combine these learning methods, right? You go to class, you learn your structured material, reverse engineer some things, you pair a program, you find a mentor, you put all these things together, you really become an expert at something, and you learn very well. So, sleep for best results. I've kind of gotten big into sleep. I have epilepsy, which means I have seizures sometimes, and a lot of that's related to not sleeping enough. And so I got really curious about learning how to sleep and like what that means. So there's this book called Why We Sleep, and it's by a researcher that's been studying sleep for 28 years. And so he went ahead and wrote it, and I wanted to learn more about how sleep works and like why it's important for me to do that. Like what's happening in my brain while I'm sleeping? Like why do I need to sleep a long time? Why can't I sleep 3 hours a night, right? And so the reason why, at least one thing, is it creates a lot of mental connections. So when you're learning, you have all these new things that you learn throughout the day. And if I told you right now, go try to do a handstand, and then 10 minutes later I asked you to do it again, you'd have all that knowledge there, but you really wouldn't know what to do with it, right? Nothing is like a reflex. But if you try to do something, you slept on it overnight, and then you tried it again, it'd be a little bit more of a reflex, right? Like I tried that, I've like processed these things in my brain. And what happens during sleep is you have a state of REM sleep and then deep sleep. And in REM sleep, it's actually when your body becomes paralyzed. I don't know if you guys have ever had this. I don't, but basically you wake up and you really can't move anything. And that's just your body not being able to come out of REM sleep. But REM sleep is kind of like all these random connections that are happening, right? It's like every permutation, like in a neural network that's building in artificial intelligence. It's like, here's this random thing I saw today. Here's some experience I have. I'm going to map all these things together. And at the end of it, you kind of make these connections in your brain that make sense to you. So that when you go and try to tackle a new problem, you have ways to relate A to B, C to D, and so forth. So your actions become subconscious once you have the time to go through your sleep and have your brain make all those connections, because then it becomes something that's more of a reflex, and it's something you can actually use. So that's why, like, I can do a handstand up here today, and I don't have to go through every single step. It's more of a reflex for me. Go to sleep. Seriously. He calls it a sleep opportunity. He says every person should have an 8-hour sleep opportunity, which means give yourself 8 hours in bed. If you don't sleep the whole time, at least you tried 8 hours. Last night, I was doing my slides. I was like, oh, I got to this slide. You know, I should probably go to bed. 10:36. Oh, it's 10:43 now. I should really, oh, it's 10:54. But I have a few more slides. It's 11. Oh, go to bed. All right, so find what your limit is. Make sure that you get that sleep. Because in the book, it talks about how if you don't sleep enough, those connections that you would make that night, you can never make up. You can feel better the next few days, but your brain isn't able to process the information you learned that day into those new memories and ways to learn. So let's put together all these things about learning new things. Things. So we got the beginner, we got the expert, and we have us in the middle. We remember that everyone is a student. So we're going to be humble, we're going to be kind. We're going to realize that somebody just came out of school, and I'm not going to say, you don't know RxJava, you don't know Kotlin, you suck. Like, that is not cool. Like, we've all been that person before. We want to be encouraging. This is a community of people. We're all here to learn. Let's support each other. But realize things are uphill, right? It's going to be hard to keep going up. So you're going to have to persist and keep going. As you try to learn new things, you'll keep learning. You try, learn, and your brain will stay fit. You can stay healthy, be able to learn new things. Please be curious. Ways that I suggest for you to be curious as Android developers, learning new things, would be go to conferences. Yay! We all did it, right? So we're here. This is great. We're able to see 30 plus talks. If we can clone ourselves, probably more like 15. I guess that would actually be less. But we want to watch videos. So there's a lot of videos like Android Dialogues. This is a great video series that Chuki and Win put out. I watched like a conference I didn't go to. I'll go back and look at all those talks. At this conference, I'll go back and look at all the ones that I missed today when I was back finishing my slides. But these are things that you can just be curious about and get that 1 hour section of like, okay, now I understand this topic. Newsletters and blogs. Android Weekly, Yuri is here. He's one of the editors for that, and that's just an amazing source for all the new stuff that's coming out in Android. And Twitter. I'm actually going to be creating a blog post later this week that kind of has some suggestions on where to go for these. Some of the links to the newsletters and conferences and podcasts and things like that. So, but these are good places to learn. So have your safe learning environment. You need a try-catch block. Nobody can ever just run that first piece of code and be good forever. Maybe it is good the first time, but you're eventually going to get a crash, and are you going to be ready for it? Persist. Nothing worthwhile is easy, right? You go down the rabbit hole of learning Kotlin, and you're like, oh, I got this. And then you realize, oh, well, I need to do this special thing. I needed to learn an extension function. I need to learn a coroutine. I need to learn all these other things. You have to keep going, and finally you'll have this aha moment, and you're like, oh, I just leveled up. This is great. This is the picture that they called me out for at work. They're like, that guy's hair, it's not you. Like, yes, it is. So that's on my road trip in Las Vegas. I pulled over and did that handstand. But find the time. Can you learn at work? That's awesome. If you do what you love, then hopefully what you're doing at work is something that you want to spend time learning. Do it on your personal time. It depends. But really, that combination of doing things at work and at home, if you can learn both places, you have enough time to really go deep, and you can really learn something. So I suggest you to have fun, keep learning, and lastly, don't try this at home, please. But please do, but don't. So thank you very much.